You're now watching a clip from the Inspired by show. You can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel or listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to head over there, leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed it, and follow the show. What's your experience of this actually behind the scenes? Is it possible or is it a load of BS?
Straight up, get rich quick schemes do not exist.
Okay,
all right,
good.
they just
We're on the same page.
Yeah. But it's interesting what you've just said. Then I believe there's two sides of it. So one's the teachers, tutors, coaches side, and the other is like the person doing it, like the client. So from our point of view as the tutors, you do have a responsibility to sort of tell the truth. Now, obviously, every business when they're marketing, they want it to seem as good as it can possibly be. But you've got to play within the lines of reality there, right? If you're promising something, you better be able to deliver, because it's not just your reputation that's on the line, but that person's livelihood, who's investing in you. Like, who knows who's relying on that person? You know, you've really got a big responsibility to deliver. Now, on the other side, the client side, or the person signing up to these things hoping that they're going to work, they've also got to take a bit of responsibility. And it's not the easiest thing to hear if you've been like on the wrong side of it, but, and it comes back to emotions getting involved, right? It's if something, I know everyone says if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Maybe, but also, why don't you take that extra minute to think about it, or just that extra day? There's never been in my life a situation where I had to make a decision right then, or the opportunity would have gone, you know, if it's a course or something like that. Now, if it's like to take a trade, obviously, in the moment, you make the decision or not. But if you come say to someone, look, I need another day, I need to just really process this, what's going to happen? Like, the world's not going to change tomorrow, right? So you can do that. People get so caught up in the emotions, so excited that someone's promised them the world, they're going to change their life, that they go blind. And the red flags are completely missed. Trading is obviously the worst example of it. Like, there's an amount of scams out there that it's awful. Because there's a difference between a get-rich quick scheme and a flat-out scam as well, right? Unfortunately, that one reigns a bit supreme.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as a client, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I want to do this thing, but it sounds a bit, well, speak to people, like speak to humans. I think the biggest thing people do is they ignore like the obvious flags, like, oh, the person won't speak to me, or that the person who's running this is too busy to chat, but they just said sign up now. Like, I don't know about you, but if a client or a potential client ever needs to speak to me to get some reassurance, why wouldn't I speak to them?
Exactly.
Like, also to make sure that they're right for it. Because if they're wrong, they're going to come into the program, not do well, and who wins then?
Yeah.
So if anyone, like, if they don't want to speak to you, or there's a lot of red flags and you're not able to speak to any people, like, stay back, like take a breath and have a look at that.
Yeah.
That's the best way I would say to really avoid these situations.
And interesting though, it's the same in trading though, because you don't always take every single trade. In the same way that in the training business, we're not always going to take every single client. And customers, people who are coming into the training, whether they're in your space, my space, or any other industry, it's about knowing actually you might not necessarily need to work with that mentor. And the reason why I find trading fascinating from a training perspective in trading is that I would say, if I was to compare, there's a hell of a lot more stigma in your industry with teaching trading than there is in my industry. Obviously, I teach book publishing, media. Yeah, okay, I have to deal with the stigma of the media a lot. And people go, I don't like the media. Well, don't watch it, just be featured on it. That's my view. But for trading, there's a lot, because, you know, we've seen like movies like Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, where it's just like this whole like sell them everything and tell them they need it and sell, you know. How have you battled that as a leader to break free from that stigma of what people think they know about the trading industry?
That's an interesting one. So that has been obviously a battle, because you just mentioned the word trading, is like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I'm actually not a fan of the trading industry as a whole. Now, traders in the city, say what you will, system and all that, fine, that's different. But us individual traders, we're called retail traders, okay? I don't like the industry because people are very much like cutthroat, all this kind of thing, very like, a lot of people trying to sound very intelligent and using a lot of jargon. That's why you'll always hear like jargon online and things like that. And people feel superior by it. And they use it to sell programs because people feel, oh my goodness, like this person knows so much. But that, like, it's just unnecessary. You could jargon anything, right? You could complicate anything. So my whole thing about the trade tribe and everything is just like, keep it simple, cut the fluff. To be good at trading, like to be amazing at trading, is a lifelong skill. If anyone tells you they can do it in quicker than that, they're lying. It's like people who sign up to a course and they expect to be like a millionaire by next week. That's like kicking a football for the first time and then playing in the Premier League next weekend. Like, it's just like, of course you can't do that.
Yeah.
But people get sucked into these sort of things. And certain types of trading lend themselves to it. And, you know, when you see the people in, like, on the Lambos and in Dubai and that kind of thing, that eats into it quite well too. But for me, I was just like, I don't miss that. So I moved away from trading. So I used to do it full time. And I hated it. I truly hated that career because it's just you sitting in front of your screen, watching lines go up and down for hours. Like, it's awful, mind numbing, very lonely, as you can imagine, but just not ideal. You don't want to run your life like that. Well, I didn't anyway. I like people. So my whole thing was like, get away from that. Keep it simple. You don't need 5 screens, you know, all that kind of stuff that you see in the movies. Just keep it simple. Like, check it a few minutes each day, that kind of approach, because everyone can do that. And if you keep it simple, it's hard to get emotions really involved. When it's really difficult, you're panicking, you're worried, you're stressed. That's when the mistakes happen. So, yeah, there is a big distinction there that people have to make.
Yeah. It's good, though, Ben, that you've had the experience in both, because you've done that whole 5 screens, staring at lines. And you mentioned the loneliness piece, which I want to touch on because a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to that. Even though, like, I've not been in trading, I have had those moments of being in business on my own. How did you cope with that loneliness, whether it's sitting at the screen or, you know, being on your own all day? And what attracted you to the idea of moving away from that?
Yeah, I mean, to be brutally honest with you, like, I used to trade, let's say 6 to 8 hours a day in different markets, and then in the evening I'd go out, like, partying and drinking, like, just to do something different, you know, like, and it gets a really bad habit. And yeah, I mean, that was only up to, let's say, 3-4 years ago. And because you have to do it, you need that release. Now, I can see why a lot of people turn to drink in business owners, for example, or gambling or anything like that. It's just a release, right? Anything. Now, obviously, the problem is most things like that, most releases are negative. That's the bad thing. For business owners that are working on their own all day, like for me, the biggest thing I do now is go out and work in coffee shops. It sounds so silly, but massive difference. Like, even an hour a day, if you went and did that, you just feel so much better. Like, you need people around you. When I was sitting at home alone trading all day, you get so focused in and time passes, you're buying stuff, but you'd always finish the day with like negative thoughts, like what was the point of this? Like, that's what I really like about business, because even if you're having those days, it's easy to look like, oh, well, that client's just had that amazing result. Look how happy they are from what I've delivered there. Or, oh, my team's, they're able to go and do things in their life now because they're earning a great salary, or whatever it is. And that can pull you up so much. And you're like, all right, this is worth keep going. Whereas if you're on your own and there's nothing around you, and you've not got clients, you've not got anything, you're just staring at a screen, how do you pull yourself out of that? I don't know if I could.
Yeah. And that's where I find interesting, because a lot of us, we have that. If we have such a heavy extreme on one side, we find that we balance it with the opposite side. So, for example, staring at a screen for 6 to 8 hours a day, the opposite is the other extreme of the socializing, drinking, partying. So what was the catalyst or the breakthrough moment for you, Ben, where you thought, do you know what, this is it, I need to find something different?
Yeah, so it was 2 parts to that. So one was like, I had that moment with the trading full time, and one was like with the partying. So for me, the trading one was literally like, I physically can't do this anymore. My mind is like, the money's not worth it. You get to that realization. You're like, I can do with a lot less and not do this. So that's when I started to develop a strategy that I could do in a lot less time a day, just to keep the money trickling through, which is what I actually teach now, funnily enough. So that was just purely out of necessity, because I just could not stare at a screen anymore. The other side, though, and I hope you don't mind me going into this, like the partying side, that was harder to get out of, because you feel good in that moment. Like, it's hard to give up something that makes you feel good. Now, long term, that obviously doesn't make you feel good, right? But in the moment, you'd feel great. So it's hard to put that aside. Now, for me, there's a few things, but my father passing away a few years ago, that was probably a really big catalyst for me, because I was like, damn, he's not going to see. Because I always thought, oh, I'm going to be doing loads more with my life. It's going to be amazing. But then I was like, hang on a minute, he's not going to see that now, because I chose to not do this yet, and I chose to focus on the party and all that stuff. And that realization, you're like, what am I doing in my life? Like, you need a moment like that. And obviously, you'd rather it wasn't so serious, but sometimes it does take that to really pull you out of it. And while obviously it's a terrible thing, I'm glad that I had that moment to pull me out of it, because I'd never even consider going back to that now.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a weird one, but I think that's why if you're a business owner and you're working on your own, you've got to really pay attention to what you're doing outside the business, because that is the dangerous thing. That's the thing that will pull you down. Probably won't be your business. It will be, yeah, out there.
Well, thank you, Ben, first of all, for sharing that so vulnerably. And that's why I love these shows, because a lot of people come on podcasts to just talk about all their successes and their wins and their advice, but actually it's so much behind the scenes. I talk about it like an onion, we go through these layers, and, I'm sure he is watching and is so admired by you and inspired by you every single day. And I know obviously you've been gracing some big stages recently, sharing your message, and I'm sure he's there in the audience on the front row there, which is fascinating and beautiful. So you mentioned there about the two pieces. There was the personal life and finishing the partying, and then there was the professional life. And you mentioned also in business that it is usually our personal life that will affect our professional life, because I'm a massive believer in we're not two parts, we're a whole. And for me, the connection between my personal life, my business life has always been my gut, my intuition, my feeling, my passion.